How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Fireside Yankees with your boys Alex and Ryan. So today we're discussing really the Yankees needing two stars to bounce back in 2024. Ultimately, their season could be riding on the shoulders of the bounce back candidates of Giancarlo Stanton and Carlos Rodon. We're going to talk about both of them, what we need to see from them, and why they kind of hold the keys to the kingdom right now. We know Juan Soto and Aaron Judge will produce. We know Garrett Cole's a star, superstar even. We know some guys are going to show up and actually, carry their weight, carry their financial hit. But Stanton and Rodon haven't, right? Last year, Rodon was arguably one of our worst players. He had his worst professional campaign, of course, right after signing with the Yankees. And Stanton's back-to-back down seasons. Last year was his worst season as a professional, the first time in his entire career he's been considered a below-average hitter. But we know that both of them can turn it around. We know that both of them can put together good seasons. And I think that ultimately the Yankees need the perfect storm on the good side. Last year, the perfect storm happened for everything bad. We need the reverse of that. And if that happens, the World Series is certainly attainable. But Ryan, I want to talk to you about these two guys, what they have to do, what they need to do to put this team in a spot where they can actually win games in a playoff atmosphere. And to start off, we'll start with Stanton, because I think that, his value has been dropping. I don't know where he situates himself in the lineup right now. We'll discuss that, where we think he actually will slot in. But before we dive into it, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. Kind of as you mentioned with Giancarlo Stanton, right? Like, this is the first time in his career he's been a below-average hitter. I know last year he struggled a little bit down the stretch. I believe last year was actually his worst OBP in his career. And then this year, he had another worst OBP of his career. Like, he bottomed out. This is a critical point in his career, because I don't think the Yankees can afford to give him more than like half a season of run if he isn't playing well. This is a quote-unquote all-in team, right? Like, I'm going to put that in quotation marks because the Yankees have not said flat out, oh yeah, this is an all-in year, but when you trade for Juan Soto, when you trade Michael King, when you trade Drew Thorpe, when you trade Johnny Brito, you trade Randy Vasquez, and you trade Kyle Higashioka. I know Kyle Higashioka isn't seen as a major piece of that deal, but just between those four pitchers alone, that's 2 years of Michael King, that's 6+ years of Drew Thorpe, that's 6 years of Randy Vasquez, 5 years of Johnny Brito. That is a lot of service time. It's a lot of controllable pitching that's no longer in the organization, and you don't trade that away for 1 year of Juan Soto if you're not trying to win a World Series. And, look, I don't think that the New York Yankees are going to, bench Stanton after 2 weeks, but, again, they don't have a lot of time to give him, and he knows that, right? He knows he has to get significantly better. And, I don't want to kind of draw these comparisons because I understand there's a difference in how they provided their value and when they provided their value. But Alex, are you aware of the fact that Jacoby Ellsbury currently has more Baseball Reference WAR than Giancarlo Stanton, had the same amount of Fangraphs WAR as Giancarlo Stanton in his tenure with the Yankees? Like, they have the same, Giancarlo Stanton has provided less value than Jacoby Ellsbury, and both have been New York Yankees, and Giancarlo Stanton has played more seasons with the Yankees. Even adjusting for COVID, if you made that half a season or 0.3 of a season, Stanton still has a whole other year ahead of Ellsbury. So that tells you something, right? That's not good. That's not acceptable. And you're paying him more. This guy is supposed to be a middle of the order threat. He's supposed to be, the Batman to Judge, the Robin to Judge's Batman, right? Or whatever you want to call it. In 2021, honestly, at times it looked like Stanton was the Batman, right? Like, when it came down the stretch, when it was big moments, when it was clutch moments, when you needed a big home run, Giancarlo Stanton showed up. And I think he has the makeup to still be that player where if the Yankees need him, if the Yankees are in a tight spot, Stan can come up big. But, the talent, right? Like, the talent is still there. He still has to ball hard. The swing decisions didn't really change very much. But it just looks like he got old fast. Like, it looked like he got really old, really fast, really quickly. So it's like, how can he turn that around? How can he get that twitch back? How can he, turn on baseballs again? How can he, get the ball in the air a little more? How can he, be more of a, I guess, not more dynamic, because he's obviously never going to be a burner again. But, I guess the best way to put it is, can he put up an OBP above 300? Like, that's something he hasn't done in 2 years, right? That's 2 years. Typically, you don't get better in your mid to late 30s, but maybe Stan defies that aging curve. Maybe, this struggle was just a way for him to expose some things he knows he ended up needing to work on. To give you an example here, to kind of a positive example here, instead of thinking about Ellsbury, CC Sabathia, if you guys don't remember, was horrible in 2013, 2014. 2015 obviously ended up going into rehab. It was not a great stretch for his career, and he'd probably talk about that, and you'd probably say the same thing. But those were the years that helped him reform and reshape who he was as a pitcher, as a player, as a leader. And over the last 3 years of that contract, or not the last 3 years, excuse me, he got a few one-year deals with the Yankees. But he worked on a couple things. He learned how to become a finesse pitcher. He learned how to become a leader in that clubhouse. I mean, I know I haven't been around for a very long time. I'm only 19 years old, but I would sit here and confidently say that CC Sabathia is one of the best leaders the New York Yankees have had over the last 25 years, right? So, I look at Giancarlo Stanton and say, I've seen veterans turn it around before. I've also seen veterans completely burn out, right? Like, there are those two outcomes. I guess those are the two sides of that story. But end of the day, Giancarlo Stanton, as you mentioned, has the keys to really make this team special, right? Like, if he puts up a 130 WRC plus in 2024, and you have Juan Soto, and you have Aaron Judge, that's one of the most fearsome trios in all of baseball. And, end of the day, as somebody who has a rooting interest in the New York Yankees, we're both fans, I'm rooting for Giancarlo Stanton. Like, anybody who isn't a Giancarlo Stanton fan, like, I'm not saying to be a fanboy, but he's on the team, so I'm a fan, right? Like, that's the way I look at it. Even if I'm critical of him, even if, I question whether the Yankees should start him or not, I want him to succeed. If I sit here and say, yeah, I don't think he's very good anymore, I hope I'm wrong on that. Like, I want to be wrong. I want to be completely wrong. And Alex, I think you agree too. Like, I'd rather sit here with egg on my face and a great Yankee team than sit here and say I was right and we're, 3 games above 500 at most.
Oh, dude, I don't give a crap if we're wrong. I hope that we are wrong on everything the Yankees win a World Series. I will trade that any day. And for you guys, I'll trade my pride for a Yankee World Series, my friends. That's the truth. And at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We're just talking about it on a daily basis, trying to keep you guys informed. And we appreciate all you guys that have been following us and tuning in and subscribing. It means a lot to us on a daily basis. But, we all want the same thing here. And I think it's Giancarlo Stanton, like you said, to get an OBP above 300. At the end of the day, his downward trend is concerning. And I think that there's a couple of reasons for that. We've discussed his bat speed decreasing. We've discussed the fact that he's been overly aggressive at times, and the fact that, this is his first time since 2017 he's at a walk percentage below 10%. This is, or was it 2019, one of those years? Either way, I kind of feel like Stanton has the capability to be great again. You know what I mean? I do think that he still has it. I still think he can hit 30-plus homers. I still think he can get on base at above a 32%. That's not much to ask. For a player making, $28 million per season? It's not much to ask for a 34-year-old to get on base over 32%. We see DJ LeMahieu do it on a yearly basis. Why can't Stanton, who is one of the best sluggers in the game, can barely run? He should be trying to work walks. You know what I mean? At this rate, okay, so here's a take that I think it maybe is a narrative that we haven't discussed a lot about. The stress, the pressure on his shoulders is gone, right? Nobody is now relying on Giancarlo Stanton to carry this offense, especially if Aaron Judge is out. You have Juan Soto to do that now. Judge and Soto are the guys we're going to be looking to produce those home runs, to produce those, runners in scoring position, hit well in those scenarios. Stanton is now in addition to them, right? Last year, it was Aaron Judge and Stanton need to play at a high level. Judge was doing it. Of course, Stanton wasn't. And I think that pressure may have gotten to him at times mentally. He's gotten slimmer, apparently. He's obviously trying to get a little bit more flexible, stay healthy. They think that's going to aid in that kind of quest. Now, how do you think the mental idea of the pressure, being in New York, playing at a high level, with Soto coming into the fold here, do you think that impacts Stanton at all? Because personally, I do. I think that if you're Stanton, you're saying to yourself, it's not just me anymore. I'm not the guy who has to produce, has to do this. Soto will pick up the pieces if I'm struggling. That little bit of slack, I think, is going to give him a lot more confidence and comfort, knowing in the back of his head, if I strike out, it doesn't matter. I've got 2 elite hitters above me that are going to carry the weight if I can't hit right now. And I think that little, obviously we're talking about the downside of that, or like what the negative would be in that instance. But I also think it goes like this in his head, knowing that I don't have to be the one to produce. I don't have to do this. If I'm going to be booed, I'm going to be criticized if I don't do this. Just thinking I can just play baseball. I can just go out there and do my thing, rely on my instincts, rely on my a decade worth of experience hitting the crap out of the baseball. Not everyone's going to boo the crap out of me if I strike out right now, because we have other guys who can carry the load. You know what I mean? How do you think the mental aspect of bringing in a Hall of Fame level bat at 25 years old in Soto benefits the Yankees and benefits guys like Stanton, who now have that weight off their shoulders to be that big, superstar player? Stanton, for what it's worth, may be hitting 5th or 6th this upcoming season. I want you to touch on that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, end of the day, these are human beings, right? Like, these are human beings we're talking about. They're, they're susceptible to pressure. They're susceptible to emotion and all that stuff. I think oftentimes And I will sit here and I will point to myself and say, yeah, like this is ironic coming from myself. I'm a very data heavy guy. I'm a very analytics guy. And I'm not saying that analytics are why people don't pay attention to emotions, but I would say we oftentimes forget that as fans and as, observers of the game and not people who play the game, right? Anybody who's ever competed in sports knows that, like, kind of that emotional aspect of the game, that mental side of the game, how, things can go sideways very quickly. I can get in your own head, stuff like that. I wouldn't sit here and say that, the Yankees didn't have guys in that lineup and say that weren't thinking to themselves, Aaron Judge isn't here. I got to swing out of my shoes. We're trying, we're going to be a Yankee team that could finish below 500. I got to swing out of my shoes, right? Like, could you imagine being being a part of the first Yankee team in your lifetime for a lot of these players to finish below 500? Like, I know Stanton, I think, was alive for one of the last below 500 Yankee teams, but like, let's hear Anthony Volpe. Your entire life, like, you were born into the dynasty years, you grew up on some pretty good Yankee teams, and then your first year as a major leaguer with the New York Yankees, your favorite team growing up, you are a below 500 team. Like, there's pressure there, right? Like, Stan, again, there's pressure there. There are jobs that are going to be lost. Like, look, I know that he's going to end up making the money regardless, and I think people think that that's all that matters for players and that that's the only way to be happy. But Giancarlo Stanton's playing for his job. Do you think he came to New York to get DFA'd in the middle of July in 2024? He came to New York to win a title. He came to New York not just to win an MVP or try to hit, 50 home runs. He came here to win a World Series title. I'm not saying that's an embarrassing way to have your career end with the Yankees. Like, you played for the New York Yankees. You've accomplished more than I'll ever accomplish in my lifetime. But from a player's perspective, you don't think Giancarlo Stanton will say, yeah, I don't want my tenure with the New York Yankees to end in a DFA, in a release, in me just being canned, and for them paying for me to play for another team. Like, that's not really something you want if you're a player. That's not something you want in your legacy. You don't think Stan wants to go to the Hall of Fame? You don't think he wants to hoist a commissioner's trophy over his head? He cares, right? Like, just as much as we care, even more than we care, because he's the one putting in the work to try to get better. He freaking cares. So I do believe there's a mental aspect of this where now it's no longer, crap, if I don't hit, we're not going to be good. It's, all right, I've got time to, if I made adjustments, I can say, look, if I have a bad month of April, that's fine, because Soto and Judge are there. Glaber had a good year. I can kind of, not that I can take a step back, but I can do what's best for the team long term by struggling a little bit in the short term and sticking to the process that I think is going to make me better for this team. Look, the New York Yankees, not that they shouldn't care about winning games in April. They should. Every single game matters. But the New York Yankees being healthy and, locked in April is not as important as them being healthy and locked in October, right? And look, I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah, the New York Yankees, I'm sitting here and penciling them in for a playoff spot. Guess what? The AL's wide open. The AL, I'm going to, for lack of better words, it fucking sucks. It's terrible, right? The reigning World Series champions don't have their best pitcher. The Houston Astros are probably the most complete team in the league, and they're getting a little older. The Rays just traded away Tyler Glass now. They don't have a lot of their players because of injury and from other situations. The Orioles haven't added a starting pitcher. I mean, come on, the Boston Red Sox added Lucas Giolito, and I see people parading on Twitter like it's their Super Bowl. Like, this is the AL East the AL is in a sad state of affairs. It's for the Yankees taking, right? I view it as the Yankees are probably going to make the postseason. So if you're Giancarlo Stanton, as you mentioned, there's not as much pressure for you to go out and perform in April. There is pressure for you to get it done the first half, but as you mentioned, he has some time to try to stick to his adjustments and try to see them through and try to, give them time to develop and work out with Juan Soto and Aaron Judge in the lineup.
Yeah, exactly. And look, this is going to be, if this team is firing on all cylinders, they're going to be really hard to stop. Now, honestly, aside from Stanton, and you kind of referenced it, Carlos Rodon, the season may hinge on his shoulders. You know what I mean? They really may ride on him bouncing back, because you can't survive with only Garrett Cole as your top gun. And the Yankees haven't gone out and got another pitcher yet. We've talked about Montgomery. We know about Shane Bieber and all these guys. The truth is that, if Rodon carries his weight at a $28 million salary hit, it's going to be really good for this team. The rotation will be a lot better. But we also need guys like Nestor Cortez to step up or Clark Schmidt to bounce back. And the Yankees need a lot of things to happen right. And Rodon is a key piece. He really holds the keys to the rotation right now. If he flops, if he fails, we're in big trouble, because we don't have the level of depth and talent to replicate his level of quality. That's the honest truth. And what are we going to go trade more assets for Shane Bieber or rather, not even Shane Bieber, he's a cheaper alternative, but Corbin Burns or, Dylan Cease? We're going to have to pick apart our farm even more. I don't think Cashman wants to do that personally. So Shane Bieber seems like a decent alternative. But the truth is simple. If Rodon doesn't bounce back, you kind of kiss our championship hopes goodbye. Unless Cashman is willing to give away some of our top prospects, whether it be Spencer Jones or, Everson Pereira or, Chase Hampton. We need Carlos Rodon to bounce back. He really could be. He is the difference between the Yankees having to shred their farm system to try and get more pitching, or them having to add another piece or two that have that upside to be great. Have the upside to have a good year and help us in the postseason. That's the truth. So, right now, those are the two guys I'm looking at. They hold the keys to the kingdom right now. We know Judge is a superstar. We know Juan Soto's a superstar. We know Garrett Cole's going to perform. We know Rizzo will bounce back. We know Anthony Volpe should get a little bit better. We know these guys are going to be good, but Stanton and Rodon are humongous question marks. And we don't know, and that's the scary part about them. We just don't know. But if they bounce back, then things will be a lot better. And guys, I'd love to hear perspectives below on these two players, Giancarlo Stanton, Carlos Rodon. If you think they can perform at a high level, if they will help this team win a championship or at least even reach a championship, I'd be happy just getting to one, let alone winning one. We haven't been to one in over a freaking decade. World Series baseball in the Bronx. There's nothing like it, man. There really is not. There's nothing like it. And look, obviously we want to win it, but let's get there first. So always happy to hear perspectives below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.